This is a brief review of nutritional rehabilitation, applying the science of nutrition and nutritional rehabilitation and refeeding to resource-restricted settings. In recent years, there's been growing awareness of the crucial need to find ways to prevent malnutrition and rehabilitate children in the community setting. We can't simplify the problem. We shouldn't simplify the problem. There are many reasons that chronic and acute malnutrition continues to kill children. Nutritional supplements are only a partial answer, but when necessary, they can provide a critical piece of the response to the emergency that this child is facing. Mama Project has always worked at integrated approaches to addressing malnutrition. Advocacy with policymakers is crucial, and so is attention to the individual suffering child. Our experience has taught us the value of practical tools like food supplement products targeted to the specific requirements of malnourished children and communities. Better yet, when these products can be locally sourced and affordable. We are describing our systems not to claim superiority, but to offer as options. The challenge for all of us is to continue working on solutions that bring the benefits of modern nutrition science to those who need it most. Let's review the entities of Kwashiorkor and Marasmus. Children who are suffering from extreme nutritional deficiency fall into one or two distinct types or may have overlap of both. The Kwashiorkor child classically has a swollen belly, feet, poor appetite, they're lethargic, pale skin and hair. Their hair looks sometimes yellow, orange, and it is oxidized. Their body, their nutrients that they've been taking in have not been sufficiently antioxidant to keep their hair from showing the effects of almost, you can say it looks like their hair has been bleached. Marasmus, this is the child who looks like a little old person, looks very old, loss of fat under the skin and loss of muscle. They're very hungry, they're irritable, anxious, their skin is loose and wrinkled. The Kwashiorkor child, sometimes the caregivers think, well, this child is very tranquil, and they don't recognize that that tranquility is lethargy. Again, the description of Kwashiorkor, the child is usually over 18 months old, lacks protein-rich foods and other nutrients. This is relatively more often seen in tropical countries. When these children were first described, they were sometimes called sugar babies. This is often called wet malnutrition. The child may also be very wasted. And when the child enters into nutritional rehabilitation and starts to lose the water that they've been retaining, the mother may sometimes become alarmed because their very cachectic body is being revealed underneath all of that water. And she may believe that the nutritional rehabilitation is harming her child. In this setting, any edema that you see in a child, any swelling, means severe malnutrition. That child is not fat. Also, of course, swelling could indicate something else like acute glomerulonephritis, kidney disease in a child, but in the setting of communities where there's a lot of malnutrition, an edematous child is severely malnourished, more likely than that they have some other explanation for their massive edema or mild edema. The swollen belly can be from fatty liver, edema, and or parasites. Now on the child on the right, that child has marasmus, usually under 1 year old. That child lacks energy-rich foods and other nutrients. This is more often seen in a dry climate and in times of drought, disaster, and war. The child who has dry malnutrition may also have edema. This could be classified as moderate or severe, and they may also have a swollen belly from parasites or weak muscles. Now, Sometimes we think of this as tropical diseases. These are not tropical diseases, they're diseases of poverty, and they were also very common in the developed world in years past. In the Pennsylvania Dutch community of Pennsylvania, the older women used to talk about the taking off disease. And what they were saying was when the children were taking off the breast, they started losing weight and they started becoming cachectic. And this was recognized as a very serious problem. And it was marasmus. In 100 years ago, and back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, people did not have an understanding of nutrition, and diseases like marasmus were common enough to be included in the vocabulary of the old Pennsylvania Dutch grandmothers. When you encounter a severely malnourished person of any child or adult, the instinct tells us to feed them quickly, but our instinct is wrong. This is one time when it's important to heed the advice, start low and go slow. It is dangerous to refeed without a time of easing back into normal food intake. Overly aggressive refeeding can cause a series of metabolic reactions that can lead to death of the malnourished child or adult. Again, I would refer you to the PowerPoint of Dr. Sunday Pam. In the ideal world, all malnourished people would be in a hospital with all of the resources to monitor the recovery. We wish for the day when that will be possible. However, now in many communities and even in the hospitals and nutrition centers, we do not always have the ability to do all of the monitoring and titration of the nutrients that the person needs to achieve recovery. However, when we cannot have access to all of the most advanced training, tests, and therapies, we can still learn the basic rules and understand the principles of what a severely malnourished person needs and when. This is a very worried mother seeking help for her moderately malnourished child. When assessed with the tools, the infantometer, and the weight, this child was moderately, not severely malnourished. Even in a community setting without the benefit of IV therapy, we can supply appropriate nourishment in the amounts and in the order that can be extremely helpful. Again, refer to the PowerPoint from Dr. Sunday Pam on the refeeding syndrome and to the WHO pocketbook for the hospital care of children, Chapter 7. Don't feel that if you do not have all of the resources described at your disposal, you cannot help the severely malnourished person, sometimes even in the community. Hooray for fortified food! Many food supplement products and recipes can be found that are being used successfully in programs to address malnutrition. Mama Project has always produced and used fortified food supplement bars and cookies in our programs. We have also been advocating for and producing our own formula for home or point of consumption food fortification. Additionally, we strongly join in the cheering when food manufacturers fortify sugar with vitamin A, salt with iodine, milk with vitamin D, flours and cereals with iron and B vitamins, and beverages with vitamin C, for example. These practices have eliminated many serious diseases in the communities that have access to fortified food. When have we last seen a cretin born to a mother who used iodized salt, or rickets in a child because of vitamin D deficiency? This is not seen in the developed world. Yet many people who eat a diet of food grown in nutrient-poor soil are feeding their children on a grain-based diet with high levels of the anti-nutrient phytic acid and high risk of aflatoxin contamination and low levels of micronutrients. Desirable attributes in a food supplement for malnourished children: taste and texture. It needs to be easy to use in a solid or liquid state. It has to be adaptable for all stages of nutritional rehab in inpatient feeding centers or community rehabilitation program. It has to be portable, affordable, and accessible to communities with the greatest needs. It has to be stable with prolonged storage and resource-restricted settings. It has to be easily produced without costly machinery or cooking facilities, produced from locally sourced, low-cost, highly nutrient-dense foods, fortified with a balanced formula of micronutrients and macronutrients that are essential for survival and necessary for all stages of the recovery from malnutrition, including the most critical early refeeding stabilization time. And it needs to be able to be produced free of contamination with aflatoxin. Aflatoxin in grains contamination of food is a growing concern. In recent years, many governments have started publishing what will be acceptable in the food sold in their country as far as the aflatoxin concentration in various grains and non-grain foods. It is a known carcinogen. People can be acutely and chronically affected by the consequences of aflatoxin exposure. There are many systems to test for aflatoxin contamination. For large businesses, they're with the capability and the requirement to do a lot of daily testing on large amounts of product. There are very sophisticated systems. There's also a system produced that is very appropriate for small scale production of food products, and that is a product produced by our biofarm. The sample is tested with simple procedures and scanned by a smartphone app to reveal the presence and degree of aflatoxin contamination in the product. You can check this out online. Rita Smart App software video on YouTube will introduce you to the technology. Now, here's some ideas for making a nutrition supplemental food in the community. Go to the local market or visit the farmers. This is a picture we took of the local market where we bought our first bag of peanuts. Find local nutritious foods like peanuts. Buy 50 kilograms to roast and grind into peanut butter. Gather a few friends who are interested in childhood malnutrition. And whip up a batch of nutritious food with peanut butter, powdered milk, and molasses, and the addition of macronutrient powder and micronutrient powder. Then, here's the most important thing. Do the kids like it? Do they eat it? Malnourished children. Taste. There's one little guy who thought his mommy should get a taste of it. Moms with children recovering from malnutrition. What's in it? Peanut butter, non-fat dried skim milk, molasses, and the micro and the macro mix. Then, how would you use this to turn it into a drink that the children can use and adults recovering? For the first few days, to make the appropriate concentration of calories, macro and micronutrients, you take water to make up to 1 liter, a quarter cup of sugar, which has 194 calories, one of the Mama Super Bars, 544 calories, and 1.7 cc's of the macro mineral blend, which has magnesium, calcium, potassium, and phosphate, as well as sulfa. That will give you 738 calories in a liter. Protein is 16.6 gram per liter. In the initial stabilization phase, it is important to look out for hypoglycemia, hypothermia, dehydration, and infection. So that in addition to the food supplement, the F75 formula, the children need other attention in a loving and supportive environment. Feeding with this kind of formula or F75, there are many formulas for F75 if available, should start immediately and feed every 2 hours, continue day and night. As the child improves over the first 2 to 7 days, the formula can gradually be substituted with F100 or the following formula. The formula for catch-up is often called F100, and there are many ways to make this, but we're offering this suggestion. You can take 2 of the Mama Super Bars, which adds up to 1,088 calories, water to make a liter, mash it up, shake it up, and it stays in the water. Every time you pour out a serving for the child, you have to shake the container again because it does settle, so you don't want one serving to be mostly water and the other thicker. You want a uniform amount. Refer to the charts to give the appropriate amounts for weight, and be sure to cut to 2/3 in a child with severe edema. Gradually, as the child is becoming stabilized, usually over 2 to 7 days, give half of the F75 and half of the F100 catch-up formula, and as recovery continues, gradually transition to more of the F100 formula for catch-up. If you see signs of the refeeding syndrome, rapid heart rate, shortness of breath, cut the rate in half and gradually work back up to the full amount over the next few days. And again, see the PowerPoint with Sunday Pam, Dr. Sunday Pam. And if the person is tolerating the drink, increase by about 10 ml at each feeding. Stop increasing if the person doesn't take the entire feed. There's a nutrition sheet. This is a chart for volumes. Of course, we're round up the volumes. You don't need to give 754 exactly, for example. And this goes all the way up to a 20-kilo child. Thank you.